My name is Elena Mercer, I am 35 years old, and 10 years ago, my own mother stole the company I had built from nothing and handed it to my younger sister. I remember standing in my mother's kitchen that morning, holding a folder with my company papers inside, while she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You're too young to understand what you're doing." What happened next changed my life forever. But I didn't know that 10 years later, the same woman would call me crying and beg me to come home. Back then, I was 25 and completely in love with the small business I had built. It was a software company called BrightNest, and it helped small stores manage orders, customers, and payments without needing expensive computer systems. I had started it in my tiny apartment with an old laptop, 2 cups of coffee, and a notebook full of ideas. For almost 2 years, I worked every day and most nights. I didn't have fancy furniture. I didn't take vacations. I even drove an old car that sometimes refused to start. But I didn't care. BrightNest was mine. Then everything changed when my mother, Marjorie, asked me to come home for dinner. Welcome to a new video. I hope you'll enjoy the story. Share your city name from where you are watching me in the comments section. Thanks. Now let's get back to the story. My mother had always treated my younger sister, Tessa, differently. Tessa was 3 years younger than me, and somehow every mistake she made became someone else's fault. If Tessa lost a job, Mom said her boss was unfair. If Tessa spent too much money, Mom said she deserved better things. If Tessa failed at something, Mom told everyone she had simply chosen the wrong path. I had always been the opposite. I was the daughter who figured things out. So when Mom said, "We need to talk about your company," I thought she was finally proud of me. I was wrong. At dinner, Tessa sat beside her, smiling like she already knew something I didn't. Mom folded her hands on the table. "Your father and I think BrightNest needs someone with business experience," she said. I stared at her. "What does that mean?" "It means you're going to let Tessa help run it." I almost laughed. Tessa had never worked in software. She barely knew how the company worked. She had been helping me with a few simple office tasks, but that was all. Why would I give her control? I asked. Mom sighed as if I were being difficult. Because she's family. That doesn't make her qualified. Tessa's smile disappeared. Mom's voice became colder. "You've always been selfish, Elena." Those words hurt more than I expected. I had spent years helping my family whenever they needed money or favors. I had paid Mom's medical bills once when Dad's hours were cut. I had helped Tessa pay her apartment deposit. I had even worked through Christmas because I wanted BrightNest to succeed. And now Mom was calling me selfish because I wouldn't hand over my company. I stood up. "No." Mom looked at me strangely. "No," she repeated. "No. BrightNest is my company. I built it." Then Mom said something I will never forget. "Not anymore." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a thick envelope. My stomach tightened. Inside were copies of documents I had never seen before. There was a company agreement, a transfer form, and a signature that looked exactly like mine. But I had never signed those papers. I looked at Mom. "Where did you get this?" She didn't answer. Tessa looked down at the table. That was when I understood something terrible. This wasn't a discussion. They had already planned everything. My mother had taken my company away from me. And somehow, they had made it look like I had agreed to it. I grabbed the papers and rushed home. I called my attorney, but before I could explain everything, an email appeared on my phone. BrightNest ownership transfer completed. The new owner was listed as Tessa Mercer. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. Then another email arrived. It contained a message from my biggest client. "Congratulations to Tessa on taking over BrightNest. We look forward to working with her." My mother had already contacted my clients. She had already transferred control. And then my phone rang. It was Mom. I answered without saying a word. Her voice was calm. Elena, don't make this harder than it needs to be. I whispered, what did you do? She paused. Then she said, I did what was best for this family. I looked at the forged signature on the table. And for the first time in my life, I realized my mother wasn't asking me to give my sister my future. She had already taken it. But there was one thing Mom didn't know. I had kept a private backup of every BrightNest file since the day I created the company. And hidden inside that backup was something that could prove exactly who had stolen it from me. I barely slept that night. I sat at my kitchen table with the BrightNest backup open on my laptop, staring at folders I had created years earlier. Every project was there. Every customer agreement. Every payment record. Every early version of the software. And most importantly, the original company documents I had saved before BrightNest had even made its first dollar. My hands were shaking as I opened the oldest folder. There it was. The original business registration. My name was listed as the owner. I took a deep breath and called my attorney, Daniel Reeves, first thing in the morning. He had helped me with BrightNest when I first started the company, and he knew how hard I had worked. Daniel, I need you to look at something, I said. He asked me to send everything. I emailed him the original documents, the transfer papers, and the message saying Tessa was now the owner. Then I waited. For almost an hour, I heard nothing. Finally, my phone rang. Where did you get the transfer agreement? Daniel asked. My mother gave it to me. There was a pause. Did you sign this? No. Are you absolutely sure? Yes. His voice became serious. Elena, this signature is supposed to be yours. But if you don't sign it, we have a major problem. I looked at the paper again. Can you prove it? We can try. Those words gave me a small bit of hope. Then Daniel said something that made my stomach drop. I also checked the state business records. Tessa's ownership was filed yesterday. Yesterday? Yes. And someone also changed the company mailing address. I closed my eyes. That explained why I hadn't received any notice. My mother had thought of everything. Or at least she thought she had. I spent the next few hours collecting every piece of proof I could find. Old emails. Bank records. Company invoices. Messages with customers. Even photographs of me working at my first desk when BrightNest was nothing more than an idea. Then I found something strange. One folder had been opened 2 weeks earlier. I knew because my backup system kept a record of every change. The folder was called Legal Documents. Someone had accessed it from a computer that wasn't mine. I checked the date. 2 weeks before Mom told me about Tessa. My heart started beating faster. Someone had been preparing this long before I knew anything. I called Daniel again. I found something. He listened while I explained. Can you send me the access record? Yes. Do it now. Don't change anything else. I sent it. Then he said, Elena, don't contact your mother yet. Why? Because if someone is trying to cover their tracks, we don't want them to know what evidence you have. I wanted to listen. But this was my mother. Part of me still believed there had to be some explanation. So I called her anyway. She answered after the third ring. Elena. Her voice sounded tired. Mom, why did you do this? She didn't answer. Did you sign those papers? Another silence. Then she said, you don't understand. Then explain it. Tessa needed a chance. I felt tears fill my eyes. So you stole my company to give her one? She was struggling. I was struggling too. My voice broke. I worked for 2 years to build BrightNest. Where were you when I was eating noodles for dinner because I couldn't afford anything else? Mom became quiet. Then she said, you're strong. Tessa isn't. That sentence hurt more than anything else. I whispered, so because I was strong, you decided I could lose everything? She hung up. I sat there for several minutes, staring at my phone. Then an email appeared. It was from one of BrightNest's oldest customers. The message was short. Elena, I don't know what's happening, but Tessa just told us you're no longer involved with the company. Is that true? I didn't know what to say. Before I could reply, another message arrived. Then another. 3 customers. Then 5. Then 8. All asking the same question. And suddenly I understood. My mother hadn't just taken my company. She was telling the world that I had willingly given it away. But the strangest message came from a customer I hadn't spoken to in years. It said, Elena, I think you need to know who was in your office the night those papers were prepared. I stared at the screen. Because according to the message, it wasn't my mother. It wasn't Tessa. It was someone I trusted completely. And I had no idea why they had helped my family betray me. I read the message from my old customer 3 times before I answered. His name was Caleb Hart, and he had been one of BrightNest's first customers. He wasn't just a customer, either. He had watched me build the company from the beginning. He had seen me work late, fix problems, and even sleep on the office couch when a big software update went wrong. I typed, "Who was in my office?" His reply came almost immediately. "Your uncle, Raymond." I froze. My uncle Raymond was my mother's older brother. He had never shown much interest in BrightNest. Whenever I talked about the company, he usually laughed and told me that computer businesses were just fancy toys. He worked as an accountant and always believed that real businesses needed buildings, employees, and lots of paper. "Are you sure?" I asked Caleb. "Yes. I saw him there 2 weeks ago. He was carrying a folder." "I thought you had hired him." I leaned back in my chair. I hadn't hired him. I hadn't even told him about the new office. I called Daniel and told him what Caleb had said. Daniel became quiet for a moment. "Don't accuse anyone yet," he said. "Ask Caleb exactly what he saw." So I called him. Caleb explained that he had stopped by the BrightNest office to discuss an old customer problem. The office door had been open, and he had seen Raymond sitting at my desk with Tessa. They were looking at papers, Caleb said. I didn't think anything was wrong. Then Tessa told me you were planning to step away from the company. My stomach twisted. I never told her that. "I know," Caleb replied. "That's why I sent you the message." Then he added something that made me sit up straight. "Your uncle asked me if I still had copies of the original customer contracts." "Why?" "I don't know." I thanked him and ended the call. For several minutes, I simply stared at my laptop. Then I remembered something. The original customer contracts were stored in a locked cabinet at the BrightNest office. Only 3 people had keys. Me. My office manager, Nora Bell. And my mother. I suddenly remembered Mom asking for a spare key a month earlier. She had said she wanted to help me organize some old papers. At the time, I hadn't thought anything of it. Now I couldn't stop thinking about it. I drove to the office. When I arrived, the front door opened with the same key I had used for years. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew something was different. My name was gone from the wall. The BrightNest sign was still there, but underneath it was a new sign. BrightNest, Tessa Mercer, founder and CEO. I felt like someone had punched me. Founder. CEO. My sister's name was sitting where mine had been. I walked to my old office. The door was locked. I tried my key. It didn't work. A young employee I barely knew stepped into the hallway. "Can I help you?" I looked at her. "This is my office." She looked uncomfortable. "I was told not to let you inside." "Who told you?" She hesitated. Tessa. I felt my anger rising, but I forced myself to stay calm. Please tell Tessa I'm here. A few minutes later, Tessa came out. She was wearing a new suit and carrying a tablet. She looked different from the sister I remembered. More confident. Almost proud. You shouldn't be here, she said. I want my files. You don't have files here anymore. I stared at her. Those are my files. Tessa shook her head. Mom said you transferred everything. I didn't. She looked away. For the first time, I noticed fear in her face. Not guilt. Fear. Tessa, I said quietly, what did Mom tell you? She didn't answer. Did she tell you the company was legally yours? Yes. Did she show you my signature? Her eyes moved toward the floor. Yes. I stepped closer. Did you believe it? Tessa swallowed. I wanted to. That answer hurt. Before I could say anything else, Tessa whispered, Elena, you need to leave. Why? She looked toward the hallway. Then she lowered her voice. Because Mom told me something else. What? She said if you ever came back and started asking questions, we were supposed to destroy the old company records. My heart stopped. Who was supposed to destroy them? Tessa looked at me. Uncle Raymond. Then she whispered the words that changed everything. He already took the files. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. I could hear people talking in the hallway, phones ringing, and a printer making a soft buzzing sound, but everything around me seemed far away. All I could think about were the words Tessa had just said. He already took the files. I looked at my sister. When? Yesterday. Where? I don't know. Tessa, those files could prove that I own BrightNest. She looked scared. I know. Then help me. She closed her eyes for a moment. I don't know how. I wanted to be angry with her. Part of me wanted to scream that she should have stopped Mom from the beginning. But when I looked at her face, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Tessa was afraid of our mother too. Tell me everything, I said. She looked toward the hallway again before speaking. Mom said BrightNest was going to fail because you were too stubborn. She said you wouldn't listen to anyone. She told me that if I took over, I could save the company. That doesn't make sense. I know. Then why did you agree? Tessa's eyes filled with tears. Because she promised me something. What? She said if I helped her, she would pay off my apartment and give me enough money to start my own business. I stared at her. So this was about money. For me, yes, she whispered. But I didn't know she was going to make it look like you signed everything. My anger softened for only a second. Did you ever ask why I would give up my company? Tessa looked ashamed. No. That answer hurt almost as much as the betrayal itself. I walked away from her office without saying another word. Outside, I called Daniel. Raymond took the old records, I told him. Do you know where? No. Then we need to move quickly. I asked what I should do. First, don't go after him yourself. Second, preserve every digital copy you have. Third, find out exactly what was changed in the company records. I promised I would. When I returned home, I opened my laptop and checked the backup again. This time, I searched for the oldest files. Most of them were untouched. But one folder was missing. It was called Original Ownership. I remembered creating it during BrightNest's first month. That folder contained the earliest business agreement, the first bank application, and a scanned copy of the paperwork showing that I had personally invested my savings into the company. Someone had deleted it. My heart sank. Then I noticed something strange. The folder wasn't simply deleted. It had been moved. I checked the backup history and found the last device that had accessed it. A computer at BrightNest. The device belonged to the office manager, Nora. I immediately called her. She didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. Then my phone buzzed. A text appeared. Elena, please don't call me again. I can't talk about this. I stared at the message. Nora had worked beside me for almost 5 years. She knew everything about BrightNest. She knew how much I had sacrificed. She had even helped me choose the company name. I typed back. Did you help my mother? 3 dots appeared. Then it disappeared. Then it appeared again. Finally, she replied. I didn't have a choice. My chest tightened. What did she threaten you with? There was no answer. I called Daniel again and told him about Nora. He immediately said, save those messages. I took screenshots. Then another message arrived from Nora. Your mother has something on me. Something from years ago. She said she'd destroy my family if I didn't cooperate. I didn't know what to say. Then she sent one final message. But I kept one copy of the file she wanted. I stared at the screen. Where is it? Her answer came almost immediately. At your old house. In the blue toolbox your father gave you. I stopped breathing. My father's old toolbox had been in our family garage for years. After he died, Mom had told me there was nothing important inside. But Nora knew about it. And apparently, my mother did too. I grabbed my keys and ran outside. As I drove toward my childhood home, one thought kept repeating in my head. If Nora had kept a copy of the file, maybe I still had proof. But when I reached the house, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The garage door was already open. And beside it sat my Uncle Raymond's car. I stopped my car across the street from my childhood home and stared at the open garage. Uncle Raymond's car was parked inside, exactly where my father used to keep his truck. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. For a moment, I thought about calling the police. Then I remembered Daniel's warning. Don't rush in. Preserve the evidence. So I stayed in my car and watched. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Finally, Raymond stepped out of the garage carrying the blue toolbox. My heart dropped. That was my father's toolbox. I had not seen it in years. Raymond looked around before putting it into the trunk of his car. Then he walked back inside the garage. I quietly got out of my car. Instead of walking toward the house, I went around the back. There was a small door that led into the laundry room. I remembered the old key hidden beneath a loose flower pot. I had used that door countless times when I was a teenager. The key was still there. I opened the door as quietly as I could. Inside, the house smelled exactly the same. Old wood, coffee, and the lemon cleaner Mom always used. For a second, I felt like I was 15 again, coming home after school. Then I heard a noise from the garage. I moved closer. Raymond was talking on the phone. I found the box, he said. No, she doesn't know. I froze. He paused. Then he said, your daughter isn't as smart as you think. My stomach twisted. It was Mom. I couldn't hear her voice, but I knew he was speaking to her. Raymond continued. I'll bring it tonight. Then there won't be anything left. I pulled out my phone and started recording. My heart was beating so loudly that I was afraid he would hear it. Raymond closed the garage door and walked toward the kitchen. I quickly stepped behind the laundry room door. He walked past me without noticing. Then he left the house. I waited until his car disappeared down the street before stepping into the garage. The toolbox was gone. But something else caught my eye. On the floor beside the old workbench was a torn piece of paper. I picked it up. It was part of a BrightNest document. At the bottom was my name. And above it was a date. The date was 3 weeks before Mom had told me about the ownership transfer. I took a picture. Then I noticed something written on the back. 4 words. She never signed it. I stared at the handwriting. I knew it. It belonged to Nora. My hands shook as I called her. She answered this time. "Where are you?" she whispered. "At my mother's house." Oh no. Raymond was here. Nora went silent. "He took the toolbox," I said. I knew he would. "What is inside it?" "Something your father left behind." I felt confused. "My father?" "Yes." Nora took a slow breath. "Your father knew your mother was planning something." My whole body went still. "What do you mean?" "He told me once that your mother had been asking questions about BrightNest." "When?" "Years ago. Before your father died." I sat down on the garage floor. My father died when I was 22. Back then, BrightNest was just an idea. I hadn't even started the company yet. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because he asked me not to." "Why?" "Because he was afraid it would tear your family apart." I looked around the garage. "My family is already torn apart." Nora's voice became softer. "He also said that if anything ever happened to you, I should give you the blue toolbox." I swallowed. "What did he put inside?" "I don't know. He never showed me." "Then how do you know it matters?" "Because he made me promise." I stood up. "Where is Raymond taking it?" "I don't know." I thanked her and ended the call. Then I called Daniel. He told me to meet him at his office immediately. Before leaving, I looked around the garage one more time. That's when I noticed a small wooden panel behind the workbench. It was slightly open. I pulled it back. Inside was a tiny envelope. My name was written across the front in my father's handwriting. "Elena. Open this only if your mother ever tries to take BrightNest from you." I couldn't breathe. My father had written those words before BrightNest even existed. That meant he had known something was coming. I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a single note. It said, "Your mother doesn't want your company. She wants something much bigger." And beneath those words was another sentence. "Ask her what happened to the money I left for you." I drove straight to Daniel's office with my father's note sitting on the passenger seat. I had read it so many times that the words felt burned into my mind. "Ask her what happened to the money I left for you." When I walked into Daniel's office, he took one look at my face and stood up. "What happened?" I placed the note on his desk. He read it slowly. Then he looked at me. "Your father left you money?" "I didn't know he did." "Do you know how much?" "No." Daniel picked up the note again. "This could be important." "Why?" "Because if your father left money in your name, and someone used it to build or support BrightNest without your knowledge, it could help show who really owned the company." I sat down. "I thought my savings paid for everything." Daniel shook his head. "That's what you believed." Those words made my stomach hurt. I remembered being 25, sitting at my first desk and counting every dollar in my bank account. I had always thought I was the one who had made BrightNest possible. What if I wasn't? What if my father had secretly helped me? And what if Mom had taken that money too? Daniel asked me to tell him everything I knew about my father's finances. I explained that after he died, Mom handled most of the paperwork. She told me there wasn't much money left after the hospital bills and other expenses. At the time, I never questioned her. She was my mother. I trusted her. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Do you still have the papers from your father's estate?" "I don't know." "Then we need to find them." I called Mom. She answered after a few rings. "Elena?" I didn't say hello. "What happened to Dad's money?" There was silence. "What money?" The money he left for me. Her breathing changed. I noticed it immediately. I don't know what you're talking about. Dad left me something. I found his note. Another long silence. Then Mom said, "Where did you find that?" That question told me everything. She knew about the note. You knew he left me money. No. You just asked where I found the note. I was surprised. Mom, what happened to the money? Her voice became sharp. You've always been obsessed with money. I almost laughed. You stole my company. I didn't steal anything. You forged my signature. You don't know what you're talking about. Then explain why the transfer papers have my name on them. She hung up. I stared at my phone. Daniel had heard the entire conversation. Did you record it? No. That's okay. We have enough to keep looking. He helped me contact the bank connected to my father's estate. Because I was the named beneficiary, they were able to confirm that an account had existed in my name. Then they gave me the information that made my hands go cold. The account had contained $180,000. I stared at the number. That's impossible. Daniel looked at me. Why? Mom told me Dad left almost nothing. The bank employee checked the records. The account was closed 8 years ago. Who closed it? The employee looked at the screen. An authorized representative. Who? She gave me a name. Marjorie Mercer. My mother. I felt like the room had suddenly become too small. She hadn't just taken my company. She had taken the money my father had left for me. And she had done it years before BrightNest became successful. But there was something even stranger. The bank employee said the money hadn't simply disappeared. Almost all of it had been transferred to another account. An account belonging to a company. I wrote down the company name. M&M Holdings. Daniel immediately searched the state business records. His face changed. What? He turned his computer toward me. M&M Holdings had been created 6 months before BrightNest. And the registered owners were my mother and my uncle Raymond. I stared at the screen. My father hadn't simply left me money. He had left me the starting money for my future. My mother had taken it. Then she used it to create a company with Raymond. And somehow, that company was connected to BrightNest. Daniel began searching through the records. Then he stopped. Elena. What? There is one more thing. He pointed at the screen. M&M Holdings had recently received a large payment from BrightNest. The payment had been made just 3 days before my mother transferred BrightNest to Tessa. I felt sick. Why would my company pay them? I don't know yet. Daniel opened the transaction details. The description was only 3 words. Founders Repayment Agreement. I stared at those words. I had never signed any repayment agreement. Then my phone buzzed. It was Tessa. Her message contained only one sentence. Elena, I found out why Mom wanted BrightNest. A second message appeared. And I think Dad knew about it before he died. I called Tessa immediately. What did Dad know? She didn't answer right away. Where are you? I asked. At the house. Mom's house? Yes. Leave. Her voice became quiet. Why? Because I don't know what Mom is capable of anymore. There was a long pause. Then Tessa said, Elena, you need to hear this. I waited. Mom has a locked room upstairs. I frowned. What room? The old sewing room. I remembered it. After my father died, Mom had stopped letting anyone enter that room. She always said it was full of old things and nothing important was inside. What about it? I found the key. My heart started beating faster. What's inside? I don't know yet. But I found Dad's name on one of the boxes. I told her I was coming. When I reached the house, Tessa was waiting by the back door. She looked nervous. "Did Mom see you?" "No. She's out." We went upstairs together. The hallway looked exactly as it had when we were children. Old family pictures covered the walls. There was one of Dad holding me when I was 5. Another showed Tessa sitting on his shoulders. I stopped at that picture. "I miss him," I whispered. Tessa looked at me. "Me too." For the first time since this nightmare began, we stood together without fighting. Then she took out the key. The sewing room door opened with a soft click. Inside were boxes stacked almost to the ceiling. Tessa pointed toward a small wooden chest. "That's the one." I opened it. Inside were old bank papers, letters, and folders. Then I saw a name written across an envelope. Elena. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was a letter from Dad. My eyes moved slowly across the page. He wrote that he had placed $180,000 in an account for me because he wanted me to have a chance to build something of my own someday. He said Mom knew about the account, but she was not supposed to touch it. Then I reached the last part. Dad had written that he had become worried about Mom's plans. He believed she was trying to move money into a company controlled by her and Raymond. He didn't know exactly why. But he wrote one sentence that made my heart stop. "If she ever tells you I left you nothing, don't believe her." I covered my mouth. Tessa began crying. She lied to both of us. I nodded. But then I noticed another envelope beneath Dad's letter. It was addressed to someone else. Raymond Mercer. I opened it. Inside was a copy of a business agreement. The agreement showed that M&M Holdings had borrowed $180,000. The lender was my father's estate. The borrower was M&M Holdings. And the person who had signed for the company was my mother. But there was something even stranger. The loan was supposed to be repaid within 5 years. It never was. Instead, 8 years later, M&M Holdings suddenly claimed that the money had been converted into an ownership interest in BrightNest. My mind raced. That was why Mom had transferred to BrightNest. She wasn't simply trying to give Tessa my company. She was trying to make it look like BrightNest belonged to M&M Holdings because my father's money had helped fund it. But that still didn't explain why she had chosen Tessa. Tessa looked at the papers. Maybe she needed someone else to put her name on it. I looked at her. "What do you mean?" Mom couldn't run BrightNest herself without people asking questions. But if she gave it to me, everyone would think it was a normal family business. That made sense. Then I found another document. It was a recent contract between M&M Holdings and BrightNest. The contract said that BrightNest owed M&M Holdings hundreds of thousands of dollars. I looked at Tessa. "Do you know about this?" She shook her head. "No." "Then your company is already in debt." Her face went pale. "My company?" I looked at her. "No. My company." Before either of us could say anything else, we heard the front door open downstairs. Mom was home. Tessa whispered, "We need to leave." But then footsteps began moving up the stairs. Slowly. One step at a time. We grabbed the documents and moved toward the door. Then Mom appeared at the end of the hallway. She looked at both of us. Her eyes dropped to the papers in my hand. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then she said quietly, "You found it." I stepped forward. "You stole Dad's money." Mom's face changed. "You don't understand." "I understand everything." She looked at Tessa. "You were never supposed to find those papers." Tessa stepped beside me. "Why did you do this to her?" Mom's voice broke. "Because I was trying to save this family." I shook my head. "No, Mom. You were trying to save yourself." She stared at me for several seconds. Then she said something I never expected. Your father didn't die believing BrightNest was yours. I froze. What does that mean? Mom's eyes filled with tears. He left behind one final document. She pointed toward the locked room. And if you read it, you'll finally understand why I took your company. I stared at my mother, unable to understand what she meant. What final document? Mom looked toward the sewing room. Your father wrote something before he died. He wanted you to have it when you were older. Then why didn't you give it to me? Her eyes filled with tears. Because I was afraid. Afraid of what? She didn't answer. I stepped closer. Mom, you took $180,000 that Dad left for me. You helped move my company into a business you controlled. You put my sister's name on it. And now you're telling me Dad left another document? I never wanted things to go this far. That doesn't answer my question. Mom looked at Tessa. I thought I could fix everything. Tessa shook her head. You should have told us the truth. Mom looked down. I know. She walked into the sewing room and opened a small cabinet in the corner. From inside, she pulled out a black folder. My name was written on the front. I reached for it. Mom held on. Before you read this, you need to understand something. What? Your father knew about BrightNest before you ever created it. I frowned. That isn't possible. He knew you wanted to build a software company. He had been watching you work on your ideas for months. I remembered those days. Dad used to sit beside me at the kitchen table while I worked on my old laptop. He never understood the software, but he always asked questions. I remembered him saying, one day, you're going to build something bigger than you can imagine. I had thought he was simply being a loving father. Mom finally released the folder. Inside was a document signed by my father. I read the first page. It explained that Dad had created a private trust for me. The $180,000 was supposed to help me start a business if I ever chose to do so. But then I reached the next page. The trust also contained a condition. If anyone tried to take control of a company I created using that money, the trust would protect my ownership. I looked at Mom. So you knew. She nodded. You knew BrightNest was protected. Yes. Then why did you do this? She started crying. Because Raymond found a way around it. I looked at the document again. How? Mom wiped her face. He convinced me that if BrightNest became part of M&M Holdings, the trust would no longer matter. Tessa stared at her. And you believed him? I wanted to. That answer made me angry. You didn't want to believe me, I said. You wanted to believe him. Mom didn't argue. Then I noticed something strange in the folder. There was another page. It was a handwritten note from Dad. I read it slowly. Elena, if you're reading this, something went wrong. Trust the person who stayed when everyone else walked away. I stopped. Who is that? Mom's face went pale. Tessa looked at me. I don't know. I read the sentence again. Then I remembered Nora. She had stayed with BrightNest when everyone else told me the company would fail. She had kept a copy of the file. She had risked her job to warn me. Could Dad have meant her? Before I could think further, Mom spoke. It wasn't Nora. I looked up. How do you know? Mom didn't answer. Instead, she took another paper from the folder. It was a list of names. At the top was my father's name. Below it was Raymond's. Then Mom's. Then someone else. A name I didn't recognize. Victor Hale. Who is Victor? I asked. Mom looked frightened. He was your father's business partner. I had never heard that name before. Dad had a business partner? Yes. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because Victor disappeared after your father died. I looked at Tessa. What does that have to do with BrightNest? Mom whispered, everything. Then she explained that Victor had been the person who helped Dad create the trust. He also knew about M&M Holdings and the money that had been moved into it. But there was one problem. Victor had vanished 8 years earlier. I felt confused. If he disappeared, how could he help now? Mom's eyes moved toward the folder. He didn't disappear. What? He left because I asked him to. The room became silent. I stared at her. You sent him away? Mom nodded. Why? Because he found out what Raymond and I were doing. Tessa stepped forward. What did he find? Mom looked directly at me. He found proof that the money was never supposed to belong to M&M Holdings. My heart started pounding. Where is that proof? Mom didn't answer. Then her phone rang. She looked at the screen. All the color disappeared from her face. I watched her answer. Hello? She listened. Then she whispered, no. You can't do that. A few seconds passed. Mom's hand began shaking. She ended the call and looked at me. Victor is alive. I felt a strange chill. Where is he? Mom looked toward the front door. He's coming here tonight. And then she said the words that made me realize the biggest secret had not even been uncovered yet. He says he has the original proof of who owns BrightNest. I stood in the hallway staring at my mother. Victor is coming here? She nodded. And he has the original proof? Yes. Then we wait for him. Mom shook her head quickly. No. You don't understand. If Victor gives you those papers, everything Raymond and I did could fall apart. I looked at her. That's exactly what should happen. Tessa stepped beside me. Mom, you need to tell the truth. My mother looked at both of us, and for the first time, she seemed very tired. Not angry. Not powerful. Just tired. I made one mistake, she whispered. I almost laughed. One? She lowered her head. I thought I could borrow your father's money, build something bigger, and put it back before anyone noticed. You took my inheritance. I planned to return it. You didn't. No. And then you took BrightNest. Mom closed her eyes. Raymond told me the company would make enough money to replace everything. I felt tears in my eyes. So you risked my entire future because you trusted Raymond? She didn't answer. We waited in silence. About 20 minutes later, headlights appeared through the front window. A dark blue car stopped outside. A man stepped out. He looked older than I expected, maybe in his late 60s. His hair was gray, and he carried a small leather case. Mom immediately walked toward the door. Victor, please. He stopped on the porch. You shouldn't have called me. I didn't. He looked at me. I know. I stepped forward. My name is Elena. He gave me a sad smile. I know who you are. You knew my father? I knew him better than almost anyone. He entered the house and placed the leather case on the table. My mother stood several feet away. Victor looked at her. You should have told her 10 years ago. I was trying to protect her. No, he said calmly. You were trying to protect yourself. Mom looked down. Victor opened the case. Inside were old papers, bank statements, and a small flash drive. He placed one document in front of me. This is the original trust agreement your father created. I read it. My name was clearly listed as the beneficiary. Then Victor placed another paper beside it. This is the original BrightNest ownership agreement. My heart started pounding. My name was there. Elena Mercer, founder and sole owner. No mention of Tessa. No mention of M&M Holdings. Nothing. I looked at Victor. So my mother stole my company. Victor nodded. Your mother and Raymond created false documents to make it appear that BrightNest had become part of M&M Holdings. Tessa covered her mouth. I looked at Mom. Why didn't you just tell me? She began crying. Because by the time I realized what Raymond had done, I was trapped. Victor shook his head. You weren't trapped. You were afraid. Mom didn't argue. Then Victor handed me the flash drive. Everything is on here. Emails, bank records, copies of the original agreements, and recordings of meetings between your mother and Raymond. My hands shook. Why did you keep this? Your father asked me to. I looked at him. What did he say? Victor smiled sadly. He told me, if Elena ever needs the truth, don't give it to her until she's ready to hear it. I looked down at the papers. For 10 years, I had wondered why my mother had chosen my sister over me. Now I understood. It wasn't because I wasn't good enough. It wasn't because Tessa was better. My mother had made a terrible choice because she trusted the wrong person and then kept making worse choices to hide the first one. But there was still one question. What about Raymond? Victor's expression became serious. He knows I'm here. Almost as soon as he said it, a car stopped outside. This time, I recognized it. Raymond's car. Mom's face turned white. He followed you. Victor nodded. The front door suddenly shook. Someone was pounding on it. Raymond shouted from outside. Marjorie. Open this door. Tessa stepped closer to me. I held the flash drive tightly in my hand. Raymond shouted again. You have no idea what you're doing. Victor looked at me. Don't worry. The evidence has already been sent to your attorney. I stared at him. You sent it? Yes. Another loud bang hit the door. Then Raymond screamed something that made my blood run cold. If Elena gets those files, she'll lose everything. I looked at Victor. What does he mean? Victor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pointed toward the final document in the leather case. Read that. I picked it up. It was a letter from my father. I unfolded it. The first sentence made my heart stop. Elena, if you are reading this, your mother has already taken BrightNest from you. I looked at Mom. She was crying. I kept reading. And then I saw the final secret my father had hidden from everyone. BrightNest wasn't just a software company. My father had helped me create something that was worth far more than I ever knew. And according to his letter, someone had been trying to steal it long before my mother ever took the company. I looked up from the page. For 10 years, I had thought my mother was the person who destroyed my future. But now I realized she had only been one piece of a much bigger plan. And this time, I had the proof. Before you go, I'd love to hear your opinion. If you were Elena, after discovering that your own mother stole the company you built and gave it to your sister, would you have forgiven her after learning the truth? Or would that betrayal have ended your relationship forever? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd genuinely love to know what you would have done. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe for more emotional family dramas filled with hidden secrets, shocking betrayals, and unforgettable twists. Remember, family should never be built on lies, because trust is worth more than anything money can buy. The end.